The lace applique seam is, from a conceptual standpoint, very easy, but it tends to be a little bit tedious in the execution. What you're looking at here, which you can barely see, is a blue stitching line. When I bring it closer to the camera, you can see. So using that blue stitching, I have sewn the two pieces together in what's called an applique seam. And this incorporates the fitting from the original pattern, but it shifts the seam so that the appearance is that your lace is woven to shape. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get busy. As you can see in my sample, I have marked in red on the stitching lines. So you don't have seam allowances here because we're not going to cut parallel to the stitching line. The cutting is a little bit different. So I just wanted to show you this is how we're beginning. So the cutting. When you're cutting, you want to cut between the motifs. You don't want to cut through a motif if you can help it. There are exceptions, of course, but don't make them. So here, as you can see, I'm cutting around these motifs here. Ticklish business, but it's good to be careful. And so here, there is one side that's cut out. And we'll zoom in so you can see it a little better. So you can see we have full motifs spilling out past that red stitching line. So I will go off camera and cut the other side and bring you back the results. So here I have cut the other one. Now this is where we want to match the seams. So I'm going to start actually at the bottom here. So what you want to do is look at your design, because this is going to be an overlap seam. I'm looking at this motif here. I'm thinking that this would like to overlap this. So I'm just going to cut through and match. See, we want to match the stitching lines because, see, ultimately we will baste all of this together. But the stitching lines match. And so ultimately the seam lines are going to wander around the piece. They won't sew directly on the stitching line as it exists in the pattern. So here we have this overlapped. So now what I'm going to look at is this side here. And so looking at this side, let me unpin this a little bit. See, we have this big beautiful leaf here. So what I'm going to do is to cut and if you nick your thread basting, it's not going to kill you. So I'm going to bring that back there. Have this go underneath. So you can see here, we've kind of done this sort of thing. And then I'll pin, let's see, need to clip just a tiny bit more. We want this to lay flat too. That's the other thing I should mention. So that clips there. There. Makes it nice and flat there. So now we're going to match the stitching lines and pin some more. So yes, this is looking pretty good. So this overlaps on this side, but this overlaps on this side. So working up the piece, what we can do here, because there's some repetitive motifs. To get this to open up a little bit, we can come in here. There we are. So we've made a little cut right there. So then we can bring that out. So again, we match the stitching lines. Like so. So it looks like it's pretty much going to be on one side that we look at the motifs. And we just, this is all lapped over from this side, but when we get down here, this is lapped over from this side. So next, I will go off camera and thread baste all of these edges and bring you back the results. So here we are, back from the hand basting. Now I'm going to hold this up so you can see it. The bright orange stitching is where we stitched everything down. So it comes along here, and then it comes around to here, up around here, up around here, and then along there. That is actually going to be the shape of the seam. Next, the sewing machine. So here we are at the machine, and I'm using the free motion zigzag stitch. The stitch width is 1.5 millimeters, so you have that information. You could use the other method of sewing by machine where you have the presser foot and you steer it. I just find this a little easier to manage. Heading into the home stretch. And at the end, you want to back tack to make sure those stitches don't come loose. So now we take the work out of the machine. And let's have a look. There we are. So you can see the blue. That is your stitching line. So now we'll go back to the work table to remove the basting. I've worked ahead and removed most of the basting, but you want to be careful with this. If you catch the basting with your machine stitch, you're going to have to coax it out. So this is why I'm very careful with this at the end, because once the basting is out, we can start trimming. Okay, so the basting is out. So now let's survey what we have here. Now you can see the blue stitching is the stitching that we sewed on the machine. So what you're going to notice also then is you have extra thicknesses on the back. Sometimes it's on the front, other times it's on the back. So after you have sewn and you're happy that this is where you want it, you then just want to come in and very carefully trim off the excess. So I'm trimming off the excess from the back because you just want a single layer of lace. The object is to make it look like it was woven to shape, and you want to hide the seams whenever possible. So you want to use your good scissors for this and get rid of this as we go. So yeah, it's just a matter of trimming everything out. It's kind of difficult to do through the camera lens, but part of the experience. So when I get this little motif trimmed out, I will take it off camera and trim the rest and bring you back the results. Okay, so let me just show you. So as you can see on the back, we've trimmed this out. So then what I would do here is I would probably go and trim this little bit out as well, because you don't really need it unless you like the look. So this is an overlap or lapped seam. And so you don't have a lot of seam allowances on either side because that's the object here. We want this to be as thin and invisible as possible. So I'm just going to trim that down to there and then show you the result. Okay, so as you can see, there is the seam, the blue stitching line. That's what it looks like on the back. And really, even with a contrasting thread, you don't really notice it. So I will work ahead and trim out the rest of this and bring it all back here. Almost done. Okay, now we can heave a big sigh of relief. So now, I'm going to zoom in, and you can see, barely, the blue stitching up through here, around there, and up here. Since I have trimmed away the excess, you don't really notice the seam, and that is the object of the game here. So, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Lace, sewing with lace.